welcome to Hack Your Happiness.
You'll notice in so many conversations that you have, people don't usually listen. They're always wanting to talk, right? And so if you can capture that, if you can figure out how to really listen to someone, how to really have a conversation, it'll change your research. It'll change how you view the world.
Are you a teen or adult looking for more happiness in every day and ways to connect with people in your life?
You've come to the right place. Hack Your Happiness is a podcast designed to bring you the behind the scenes of what brings iconic individuals happiness, plus their life hacks.
I'm Mercedes.
And I'm Anastasia.
And we're the two teens behind Small Bits of Happiness.
We're interviewing Olympic athletes, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and more.
Throughout all of our episodes, you'll find great conversations, hacks that you can take away and try in your life, inspiration, as well as unique and surprising insights. Today, we're speaking with Nathalia Holt. Nathalia Holt, PhD, is the New York Times best-selling author of Rise of the Rocket Girls, Wise Gals, The Queens of Animation, and Cured. She has also written for numerous publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, the Atlantic, Slate, Popular Science, PBS, and Time. She is a former fellow at the Reagan Institute of MGH, MIT, and Harvard University. She lives with her husband and their two daughters in Pacific Grove, California. Welcome, Nathalia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, we just want to quickly say, check out our happiness wellness products designed by us for individuals of all ages to help you bring a small bit of happiness to your home with our tangible tips and tools. Check them out in the show notes. Yes, thank you. We are beyond excited to be speaking with you today. You are such an inspiration and you are a very successful author and journalist. So take us back to the beginning. How did your journey begin?
So it didn't begin with writing. From a very young age, I loved science. I always was going to be a scientist. And that's not to say I didn't write. I used to fill up notebooks and write stories and even write nonfiction all during a kid. But I didn't think you could be a writer. It just didn't seem like a job that anyone I knew had or was something that I would ever be able to do. And so it just wasn't even in my mind as an option. And then I got to a point where there was a book I really wanted to tell. And this was after I'd gotten my PhD and worked as a scientist for a decade doing HIV research. But I knew I wanted to write a book. And so it was completely unexpected. And it just goes to show you never know where life is going to take you. You just never know what's coming up next. And I got so fortunate that then I was able to do this and write books and be an author.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's so interesting how you started off on a very different kind of route, but it's all kind of brought together now in terms of like what you write about and the fact that you still have some science in your work, but it's not just completely research. That's so interesting.
Yeah, exactly. You clearly have a really amazing journey and you've gone through so many amazing things, but do you think that you have one significant challenge that you went through during this journey, and would you care to share it with us?
I think everyone has a lot of challenges, right? Nobody goes through life without challenges. For me, getting published, figuring out how to actually become a published author is probably my biggest professional challenge. It seemed insurmountable. I didn't know anyone in publishing. I had no connections. I didn't know how it worked, if you needed a literary agent, if you can go right to the publisher, if you have to write the book beforehand, how to write a proposal. These were all things that I just had no idea how it worked. All I knew was that I wanted to write a book. I was passionate about this topic. I was still working in the lab. I was still at Harvard doing my day-to-day science life. But I had this drive. I really wanted to write a nonfiction book. And so to overcome that, I've had to do the most basic things. I just Googled how to write a book, how to get an agent, just silly things. And I think it just goes to show that you don't always have to know what you're doing. It's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can not know anything and not know what you're doing and still just really want to do something and work to make it happen, even if it seems impossible in the beginning.
I love that because I think so many teenagers want to write, they want to be an author, or they have a story that they want to put out into the world, and it's that big hurdle of, well, if I want to publish my book, then, there's all these different steps and hoops that I need to jump through, and I have no clue how to do anything, so I'm just never going to pursue that, maybe dream or hope of yours. And so I really love how, you share that with us and how you didn't know what to do, and you just kind of just played it by ear and just figured it out as you went along. And I think that that's such an important skill to have, because if you want something, then there's a way to get there, and sometimes you just gotta kind of figure it out as you go along. So
definitely, I mean, especially when you're going into a totally new industry. I mean, especially you also weren't like studying English or these other things in university. You didn't have these connections, but I think that definitely you have created such an amazing career, and Googling really does help sometimes. Google is here for a reason.
We live in a day and age where we're so lucky because we have like blogs and articles and email, and you know, I feel even on social media these days, like there's so many different people out there, and people talking about how they got their book published or how they self-published their book, or tips for writing, and all those different types of things. Regardless of what your interest is, I think that there's so much information out there, and so I love how, you know,
utilizing everything that you have around you, because there's definitely a lot of information.
And on that note of teenagers being interested in writing and potentially wanting to pursue that and get a book out there, what are your top 3 tips to teens to be more authentic and have their voice heard? Because your books are so authentic, and they connect to you, like you said, with your science, all combined kind of into the genre that you write. So what are your top 3 tips for teens in that realm?
So I think you have to start out by figuring what you're really passionate about. What is that story that only you can tell and you can do it? And it might be very different than what you think. I mean, as you said, I don't have an English degree. I don't have an MBA. I don't have the background. And yet I've managed to publish 5 books and write articles in all different kinds of newspapers. So you may have wanted to be a doctor since you were a little kid, and then you get into high school and you realize, wait, there's something else I want to do. And so figuring out what that passion is, what you really care about, is so important. And then next, researching it, really making sure you understand that topic. And a big part of that, I think, is learning how to listen. We have this lost art of listening. You'll notice in so many conversations that you have, people don't usually listen. They're always wanting to talk, right? And so if you can capture that, if you can figure out how to really listen to someone, how to really have a conversation, it'll change your research. It'll change how you view the world, and people will tell you things that they might not have otherwise. And then I guess last, I would say, find your people, find your community, because when you have a group of people that are also passionate and also care, it just makes all the difference in the world. I really think that's the key to finding that authenticity, having those people around you, having that support, having people you can talk to. It takes time to find that. I mean, I think most people, you know, takes like into adulthood, but you never know. You find, when you know what you're passionate about, you're going to find other people that feel that same way.
I agree. I think that, I mean, especially me and Mercedes, we have gone through a lot, and we realized that what really matters is the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, if you're surrounded by people who are passionate, excited about what they're doing, they're interested in your work as well as theirs, you're more likely to perform better and be excited and act like them as well. But if you're surrounded by people who aren't exactly like-minded and are doing similar things and are both very excited about it, it can be a little bit harder to feel more motivated and feel so secure and be able to deliver that authenticity.
I also think that when you're around people who are like-minded and who are interested in listening, as well as, you know, sharing what they know and what they've experienced, you can kind of embrace your authenticity and share your thoughts, because you feel like supported and you feel like people won't judge you or get offended. And I think in our day and age, it can be so difficult because there's a lot of people out there, and with social media, we're exposed to, you know, people who talk about their opinions, and it might be kind of easy to suppress our voice and not want to kind of express who we really are. But by surrounding yourself and listening to other people's perspectives, I think we can really realize what our own perspective is and reflect that.
Well, I know that a lot of teens really do struggle with this and feeling like they're authentic. So have you ever had a certain situation where you also struggled with this and feeling like you're struggling a bit with finding your truest and most authentic self?
Yeah, have you ever had a specific situation where you struggled to embrace your authenticity?
You know, I got to a point when I was doing HIV research where I had put so much time getting to this lab in Harvard, and it was my dream. I had done my PhD, I did my master's, I did a postdoc. I had spent so many years in the lab and research, and then I decided that I really wanted to pursue writing books. And it was kind of this crisis moment where I was like, oh my gosh, is this really who I am? Is this really what I'm going to do? I spent my whole life getting to this point, and it just seemed so crazy to then decide, oh no, I'm going to become an author now. And so it really took some time, years, I would say, of me feeling like, okay, this is the right choice. This is what I've got to pursue, even if it seems crazy, even if it seems like, why are you doing this, Nat? You've spent all these years doing a PhD. It's not to write books. But in the end, that's what it was for. And I used my PhD in ways that I couldn't even fathom when I started graduate school. So it all ended up in the right place, but it took me a while to see that.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I feel like once you've set yourself up for, I'm going to do this, and then you finally got there, but when you start to realize, I think I might want to be doing something else, it's totally understandable that you had a bit of an identity crisis, because all of a sudden, this person who you thought you were, you weren't that person anymore. And I feel like teens especially can go through that as well when they're growing up, and let's say their aspiration was to be a doctor and now they want to do something else. And I think that it's just important to stay true to yourself. And like you did, you spent some time, and even though it took a long time, you kind of realized that this was what you were truly passionate about. And I think that just taking that step and leap into saying, I know this is crazy, but this is what I need to do, is so important. And that's also so iconic and inspirational.
Exactly. Like, not being afraid to switch gears is, I think, a really big key to success and to happiness. And just realizing that we change as people, especially as a teenager. You don't need to pursue the career that you always thought you were going to do, or you don't need to stay in the same club or be friends with the same people. Like, it's okay to change, because in the end, that's who we are, and it's ever changing. And sometimes it's the road that we take that gets us to where we're supposed to be, and everything kind of comes together in a way we may not have anticipated, just like you were saying. But do you ever experience any self-doubt about how your work might be received? And do you have any advice for other teenagers who might be experiencing self-doubt?
Yes, absolutely. Every book I experience self-doubt. It's really scary because you write a book and you have no idea, is it going to sell to a publisher? Is anyone going to read it? What are the reviews going to be like? They can be really mean sometimes. Yeah, so it's a really scary thing. You have all these voices in your head, and it's kind of terrifying what is going to happen, especially when you're writing books and there's such a long time between when you're writing it to when it comes out into the world. But of course, anything, so many people experience self-doubt in so many different situations. I personally feel like self-doubt is an advantage. And the reason I say that is because it's telling you that you care about something. If you didn't care, you wouldn't have any fear. I mean, that's what self-doubt is, right? It's fear. You're fearful of what is going to happen, if this is going to work out. And it shows you that you're on the right path. You are doing the right thing, because that fear means you really care, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you just got to keep going.
I love that. I think that's so, I've never looked at it that way.
Me
personally.
neither, but I think I'm going to start, like, whenever you feel self-doubt, that's such an amazing way to think about it.
Care.
Exactly.
I think that is that's such a great perspective on it.
It really is, because I think life is all about the way you look at things.
Exactly.
And as soon as you shift your perspective to realizing this is a good thing and I should keep going rather than I'm scared, so I'm not going to do this, it's really so empowering.
And I totally understand, like, the whole book industry is so oversaturated, and sometimes I feel like teens might feel a little bit scared to write because there's so much content out there. So do you have any tips for teens who want to become an author but are a little bit scared because of the industry, as well as some tips for parents who want to support their child?
I understand being scared. It is a crazy industry. I mean, there are so many people that want to write books. And there's always going to be that. There's always going to be a lot of people that want to write books, but the number of people that actually do, that actually accomplish it, is much smaller. And that's what you kind of have to keep your eyes on the prize here. You have to remember that there is a story only you can tell, and it is up to you to do it and to figure it out, to get it through, to find that publisher. There's so many different ways to be published. It's not just one path. I do traditional publishing. But you can do self-publishing. I mean, there's just a million different avenues to get your work out there. And so there'll always be a lot of people that say they're going to write a book. The number of people that sit down and get it done that's who you want to be part of. You have a story that needs to be told. It needs to be part of this world, and only you can do it. So it's, it's just a matter of making it happen. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying you can do it. It can be done. And for parents, what can I say? Pretty much stay out of the way. This is someone's story to tell. And I definitely think that, especially young people, these are voices that need to be heard. They're voices that we need to have in publishing. And so I'd love to see more young voices coming in. And I think, one thing that might be surprising for those that don't know much about the publishing industry is how supportive authors are of each other. A lot of people think it's very competitive and that authors are always working against each other. And it's really not like that at all. Some of my closest friends are other nonfiction authors, and we support each other. We help promote each other's books. It's just a great environment. So I definitely think get out there, get writing. It doesn't have to be book length right away. You can always start with articles. You don't have to have an MBA to get articles published. I am proof of that. It can be done. There's no age limit to publishing articles and publishing books.
I love that so much. And I'm so happy to hear that it's such a supportive community, because I definitely think that anywhere where it's like someone might buy this book or they might buy that book, it would be a little bit competitive. And so I'm happy to hear that, it's a friendly, supportive community, because that's, like you said, that's so important. And I also just think it's, it's your story to share. And I love how you said that, because it's like your own voice and it's unique in that sense. And people will align with that if you pursue it. For your work, it's quite historical and historically driven. How do you come up with an idea and take it from an idea to researching it and eventually it turning into a novel? And also, do you do all of the research yourself?
I do all the research myself. And yes, it takes years to do all this research, but it's actually the fun part for me. That's what I love, because there's just nothing better than going into old journals and diaries and letters, and you're getting these stories that have never been told anywhere. You're getting all of these details of life in the past that have just never been shared. And a lot of times these are big historic moments. So it's so much fun to learn about them. And for me, this is going to sound kind of strange, but I don't go hunting for book ideas. I feel like book ideas kind of find me. And it's usually while I'm doing research for one book, another idea will come. Or sometimes it's just life that seems to bring an idea to you. For Rise of the Rocket Girls, which is my book about women at NASA, it was just so funny how I came across that story, because it was while trying to figure out a name for my daughter, whose name is Eleanor Francis, which is kind of this old, fuddy-duddy name. And I was just trying to figure out, is this a name that I should give her, or is this just a crazy name? And so I put the name in Google. Apparently Google has shaped my entire life, is what I'm learning on this podcast. And I found this woman who worked at NASA starting in the 1930s and had this long career at NASA. So you just never know where life is going to take you. These crazy things can happen. And then suddenly you find this idea and this story that you have to tell, and that you spend years researching and writing.
That is incredible. I think it's so cool how, you do all of the research yourself. Where do you find the journals and the diaries and all of that?
So you find them in archives and in libraries, and sometimes with families. Many times with families. So, it kind of starts with an idea, and then you start researching, and then you find people's friends and their families or archives where all their papers are kept. Sometimes things are online, although that's becoming more so. And sometimes it's hard to visit some of these libraries. And so you have to be really nice to these archivists who will make photocopies or scan them for you. So that's nice too. But yeah, no, there's a million places to find things like that. And there's tons of small libraries and archives. So you don't have to go to the Library of Congress or be in New York City. You can find really small libraries that are probably wherever you live, and find all kinds of crazy, interesting stories that nobody's ever published too.
Incredible. Yeah, I bet there's so much inspiration in those journals. I mean,
yeah,
like a little time capsule of somebody's experiences and stories, and that is just incredible. And
I think that's so cool.
I love that.
Yeah. So, all books convey such powerful and beautiful stories and messages. Do you have a favorite book?
like of your collection.
Yeah.
You cannot pick a favorite book. It's not fair. I won't do it. They're my children. I can't pick a favorite child. That's just wrong. You can't ask it of me. I love them all equally. I refuse to choose.
That sounds fair. I mean, they
Yeah.
all have such unique stories to share and to convey. And I think it's so inspiring how, you know, you do all this research for years and then put that together and not only, you know, educate people to, you know, learn more about any given topic that they're reading your book on, but I think it's also so inspiring for people to maybe learn more about their lives, about things that they're interested in, maybe go out and like take out a journal or take out a book on their topic of interest, because there's so much to explore in our world. And like you even said, Google holds so many things and so many even digitized books and journals.
I love how there's so much knowledge and information everywhere, not only on Google, but also if you just go to a local library and you spend the day looking around and just kind of going down little rabbit holes. And I think like that's such a great way to find new topic and things that you're interested in, because all of a sudden you're learning about things that you never really knew about. And you can even do this on Google or from home, but totally just trying to go to places that you wouldn't usually go to for new information.
Yeah. So you've also done some work for big publications, like you said, like Time or the Los Angeles Times, the Atlantic, all of those. So has there ever been anything in specific, like what inspired you to transition from journalism to being an author, or like which came first? How did that happen?
The transition was really more from being a scientist to being an author. And then journalism just came with that. You know, there's some stories that are made for books and that you could never tell in a short article. They're just too complicated, right? And then sometimes they're just stories that need to be told. And so you find a publication that will publish them. And it's a fun experience when you have that, because you get to really pitch an editor with a topic that you care about and you've already done all the research. And so you're really trying to sell it to them. And you never know if they're going to say yes or not. But anyone can do that. You don't have to have any specific background. It certainly helps if you have some idea of how to write an email that can grab someone in and give an idea of what the article would look like. And so making that transition from scientist to author and journalist was just crazy. I mean, I felt like a crazy person doing it. But now it just feels natural. I can't imagine not doing it. So, you know, everything seems crazy at first, and then it's just your life and it makes sense.
I think it's so important, because for teens especially, like sometimes our interests are all over the place and we don't know what we want and what we don't want, what we like and what we don't enjoy at all. And so I really, really love how, you know, you said that at first you felt like you were crazy for trying something out of your comfort zone, and it turns out that that's exactly what you enjoy and what you're passionate on. And so I really think that's an important lesson for us as teenagers is, you know, try new things, and even if that's stressful to you and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's totally fine. You just got to try things that you're interested in, kind of dip your feet in the water, see if that's what you want, because the only way to really know is to try, and you never know what's going to come naturally versus not. And
even
also,
if it feels crazy.
Exactly. So do you have any specific tips for teenagers right now if they're listening to this and they want to, you know, try writing for, say, maybe their local newspaper, something like that, just to kind of get that initial taste of it? What would be your first step that you would give to teens?
It's a long process to get something published, but the first step is just finding what you want to write about. And that probably is not going to be researching baby names, I'm guessing, but you never know. You just never know what's going to come up. But find something that you care about, really research it, and then figure out, where is its home going to be? What's its best place for it? And realize that there's going to be a lot of rejections. I have been rejected so many times for books and articles. It's just part of writing. It's part of life. I mean, I can't even count the number of times the New York Times has rejected my article ideas, but I've also been published by them probably 10 times now. I've had an article on the front page. So, you know, not every one of them is going to be a winner, but you keep trying. So the first one doesn't make it, just brush it right off and keep going with your next idea. Really try to make sure that where you're pitching your articles to or your book ideas to is the right home for it, and it makes the most sense.
Yes, exactly. I think that's such an important lesson really for life.
Yeah.
If you're rejected, it doesn't mean that that's a permanent rejection. You just got to keep going. And like you said, you might not make it in the New York Times the first 4 times, but then the 5th time you're published. So it's just that one last step. And
exactly. Just keep standing up after you fall down. And I think that that's what in the end makes the biggest difference. So do you have one piece of advice that you like to give to your younger self?
I do. I feel like it's not that original though. You've probably heard this before, but for me, it means a lot. I wish that when I was younger, I didn't care that much what people thought. I'm sure everyone says that, but it's really true. I was always so worried what other people thought of me, and not just what I looked like, but what I was doing and how I was acting and what I wanted from life. I mean, I cared what other people thought about my individual goals and aspirations for my life. It seems so ridiculous now. Now I realize how little people actually care, especially those that have no real investment in what you're doing. And so, yeah, if I could go back and tell myself something, it would be that, just to kind of let those voices go, not worry what other people are thinking, and really listen to the voice inside about what you want to do and who you want to be.
Yeah, I feel like that's really common among teenagers because everyone is constantly thinking, oh, what is everybody thinking about me? What is everybody thinking about me? But you don't really realize that everybody else is thinking that exact same thing. So they're not spending their time thinking about what you look like or what you're doing, especially if they're not like really, really close to you. Because if they're just, you know, some outside noise, they're not going to be spending all of their time thinking about a person that they don't really, you know, spend that much time talking to or thinking about.
And so I think that that's such an important thing, and something that Anastasia and I are both trying to establish into our lives, as well as 2 teenagers, is just focus on yourself. Because at the end of the day, everyone who you go to middle school or high school with will grow up and move on and have their own lives, and you want to be happy with yourself and the fact that you make decisions for yourself rather than for other people. But downtime is such an important part of it, of taking breaks, of doing things for ourselves, and kind of fueling our own bucket aside from just work and aspirations and goals. So what is your favorite way to take a break and to relax?
I love to run. For me, it's the exercise. It just helps clear my mind. I feel like I get great writing ideas when I run too. It's just, there's something about it, right? You're kind of sweeping the mind clean and you're able to just think afresh. And I like to do long runs. So I do half marathons and marathons. And it's just a great feeling to that feeling of refreshment and renewal, even when you're kind of sweaty and gross and weird looking.
I love that so much because there's so much science to how exercise makes us feel happier and clears our mind, gets rid of our stress. And so I think that's such a great way to take a break without necessarily, I mean, some people just love to, you know, watch a show or read a book, and that's totally valid. But for others, I mean, taking a break and, you know, maybe doing a Pilates class or going for a run or a bike ride, that counts as a break, as long as you're not like, you know, doing your work while you're on the treadmill or whatever. Maybe then that doesn't count.
That's called multitasking.
Exactly.
Yeah, so do you have a motivational quote that brings you a lot of happiness?
I do. Let me think. There's this one Ralph Waldo Emerson quote that I just love. I mean, all of his writing is great. It's so beautiful, but he has this one quote that's, adopt the earth's pace. Her secret is patience. I just love that quote. I mean, how true is that? And especially for writing and publishing, it's all about being patient. It rings true with me. You know, some quotes just feel right in your life. That's one of the quotes that I just love.
I love that. I think patience is so important, and oftentimes when you look at the world around us, not just with people but just at the earth, you can just kind of see all the patience, like for example how long it takes for grass to grow or for plants to grow, and you know how the wind isn't always super strong. It's just, it feels like
things take time.
Exactly. Mindset. And I think that that's totally so great how you can bring that into your own life, because totally so many things take patience, because nothing is always going to happen overnight, and oftentimes it's just being able to take it slow and understand that good things usually take time
and not like rush the process.
Exactly.
Like, if you take your time, put good quality effort and energy into your work, it pays off. But in terms of, you know, small things that bring us happiness every day, what do you like to do every day that brings you a small bit of happiness?
It's got to be reading. I love to read. I mean, what writer doesn't love to read? It's a prerequisite. You cannot write unless you read. It's essential. And I don't know if you have people in your life like this, but I have people in my life that are just like, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have any time to read. And I always feel sad for them. It just seems depressing not to have books in your life. I can't imagine life without it.
What's your favorite, like, are you also a nonfiction reader, or what's your favorite type of genre?
I love historical fiction. It's nice for me to not, I read nonfiction quite a bit, but it's nice for me to not read too much of it when I'm writing a book because sometimes the voice kind of gets into my head. And so it's helpful to read a different genre. And I love historical fiction. It's so fun. I just finished Frozen River. I don't know if you've read that one. It's really cool. It's kind of set in post-colonial America and has this midwife who's based on a real person. And it's a good one if you like historical fiction.
I've always been a big historical fiction person. I used to love reading, oddly enough, like Second World War historical fiction books. Like when I was little, like in grade, like literally in 5th grade, I was 10 years old and I was reading these books and I just loved them. I'd read them.
She tried to convince us to watch all these movies and I was not for it because I was always so scared of them. And I was like,
but you were like 6 or like how
no,
old?
I wasn't. I was 9.
Oh. Yeah, but I get it. So that sounds like something that we might have to pick up sometime.
Definitely.
Yeah, do you have anything exciting coming up? Any events, maybe new books, anything you can share with us?
I have a book that's being published next year. It's called The Vanishing Trail, and it'll be published by Simon & Schuster. And it's about this deadly scientific expedition that took place in 1929 and the environmental lessons from that expedition that are relevant today. So it's a little different for me. It's a different kind of book for me. It's nonfiction. And I'm really excited about it. It's really fun.
We will definitely
we'll
pick
that
up
up
because that sounds very interesting. And I love how you tie together like the past and our present world. That's
exactly.
So
and how you can extract lessons from the past and bring them with them in the future to create a better future.
There is so much to learn from the
past.
So is there any place where our audience can find you if they want to keep up and find out any new releases, etc.?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, Nathalia Holt, and on my website, nathaliaholt.com.
Perfect, and those will be linked in the show notes as well, so it's really quick and easy access for anybody who is looking. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really loved having you on today.
Thank you. I just love this conversation. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, and thank you so much to Nathalia.
Speaking with Nathalia today was so inspiring. I mean, her story of transitioning from being a scientist to a journalist and New York Times bestselling author is just so cool, and it's just a good reminder of it's okay to switch things up. Anastasia, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from today?
My biggest takeaway is just don't stop trying. If you're passionate about something, even if you're giving a little bit of self-doubt, I think also what I loved is when she said that self-doubt just shows that you care. I thought that was so powerful and so inspiring because I know there's been lots of times when I've been feeling a little bit doubtful of myself, but just changing your perspective to think about it in a positive way can really help you just to keep going even when times get rough, even if you're getting rejected again and again, just knowing that in the end, if you just keep pushing through, it will all get better and you will succeed. What about you, Mercedes?
I would say that my biggest takeaway from Nathalia today is the importance of changing up your path and how your authentic self can carry through your life. I think sometimes maybe when we're doing a big change in life, maybe we're switching schools, maybe we're switching programs, maybe, you know, we feel a shift in our interests or a drift from our old friend group or people we've been friends with for years, we can feel a sense of loss in ourselves and we're worried that we're no longer that authentic version of who we are. But I think that what we really learned from Nathalia today is how who you really are changes and transforms throughout life, and you just gotta ride that wave and realize that you change, and that's the most genuine thing about you is change. That's the most consistent thing through our lives is the fact that they'll change. And so I really loved how she talked all about that.
Me too. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. It really helps us out and we really appreciate it.
Also, be sure to join our happiness family and support Hack Your Happiness by following Hack Your Happiness on whichever podcast listening platform you're on right now. It is completely free.
See you next time!